The Penny by Matthew G McMillan. It was a classic autumn day, bright sun, mostly clear skies, and that deliciously cool breeze that smelled so clean and fresh. Out in the parks, kids and some adults were playing pickup games of football, the leaves above them changing into beautiful shades of red and orange. Jimmy Newman was walking downtown with his sister, mother, and father. Jimmy was holding his father's hand, and his sister Sarah was holding her mother's. The family strolled casually, not in any hurry that particular autumn Sunday. Many of the shops were closed, but not the bakery that sold the most delicious half-moon cookies in the whole wide world, or so Jimmy thought. The ones that had a chocolate cake-like cookie the size of a compact disc that was iced with almost an inch worth of chocolate icing on one half and vanilla icing on the other. It wasn't a treat that the kids got all the time, but often enough that Jimmy and Sarah could count on going at least once a month, much to their delight. A light northern breeze was blowing, cool enough for the family to slip into thick sweaters and windbreakers. Even in the downtown atmosphere, the air smelled clean. The sun was low on the horizon, still morning, and it was bright, intense. 2 blocks from home and 3 from the bakery, Jamie spotted a small, round, shining object on the sidewalk. It was a penny, brightly reflecting the sunlight. The penny seemed to be beckoning to him. It was in that instant when his Uncle Kurt's explanation of types of pennies came flooding back into memory. "There are 3 kinds of pennies out there, boy," Uncle Kurt had said very seriously. "There are lucky pennies, ones in the middle that aren't good or bad, and of course bad pennies, or what most call an unlucky penny. A lucky penny is as rare as an unlucky one, and you'll want to think twice before picking one up off the ground. After all, if it's such a lucky penny, then how did it get to you?" Jimmy's cheeks flushed and his eyes widened. He stopped walking abruptly, and his father looked down in mild surprise. "What is it?" he asked Jimmy. Jimmy didn't look back. He was looking down at the bright copper coin with a face full of concentration. "The penny," Sarah answered for him casually. "I saw it too. I just didn't want to stop. It's only a penny." "Hey, it could be your lucky day," their mother exclaimed. "Finders keepers, right?" Jimmy didn't hear what she had said. Not really. Sure, he had heard the words she had spoken, but none of them had registered in his mind enough to make actual sense. In his head, a battle was raging. Thoughts swirled like cyclone winds, knocking away all other thoughts like useless debris. "Take it. You'll be lucky." "Oh, you shouldn't do that. It may be the other kind, the unlucky penny that Uncle Kurt warned you about." "Don't think like that, Jimmy. It's just a stupid penny. Uncle Kurt has always told crazy stories. There's really no such thing as a lucky penny or an unlucky one. Mom and Dad say that he's just lonely and will tell stories to anyone to keep them interested for a little while. None of them are true." "But if it is a lucky penny, then maybe you'll get that cool new remote control hovercraft that you saw on TV. Maybe you'll start finding money all over the place. Maybe they'll have an extra half-moon cookie at the bakery and give you the extra one to take home. Yet, if it is unlucky, then maybe you'll die before you even sink your teeth into that half-moon cookie." He stood there silently for a few seconds in his whirlwind of thoughts. It felt like ages, but finally he decided what he was going to do. He opened his clenched hand and was just about to lean over and pick up the penny when Sarah reached down and snatched the coin from off the cement. "Looks like Jimmy didn't want it," she said with a teasing smile she always saved for her younger brother. She glanced up at their mother. "Right?" The parent shrugged, clearly not very concerned about 1 cent. "Like you said, it's just a penny," their father answered. Jimmy didn't know what to do. Should he shout or cry or make a scene? He was sure that he had seen it first, but there was the voice in the back of his head that was shouting out in defiance. It was telling him to just forget about the foolish idea of lucky and unlucky pennies. If there was justice in the world, then it would be an unlucky penny because Sarah had taken the penny from him in a way. Maybe she would lose her hair, or maybe something else hilariously unlucky. He would just let it go and see what kind of day Sarah had. "Yeah, it's just a stupid penny," he replied, still feeling upset about his missed opportunity. A flock of squawking birds flew overhead in a V pattern as they headed south. The family all stopped to look up. "Winter is coming," their father said. "It won't be long now." Jimmy looked up at the birds, but he was thinking mostly about how the penny would affect Sarah and not the coming of winter. Anyway, he liked winter and playing in the snow. It also meant Christmas would be coming up soon. It didn't take long for Jimmy to get his answer about the penny. Before they even set foot in the bakery, Jimmy could tell that Sarah was going to have a lucky day. She got the last handout freebie at the shop next door to the bakery, a pink balloon. There was no way that he would try to say that he wanted it, not a pink balloon with some kind of cute panda or something on it. That was the first thing that made him believe that she had a lucky penny. And then, when they went into the bakery, Sarah decided to turn the gumball machine handle by the front door. It was the kind that took a quarter because the gumball was the size of a baby's fist. She didn't have a quarter, but when she spun the handle on the gumball machine, one came tumbling out and hit the metal flap with a light thud. Even if the thing was hollow in the middle, it was quite a score for a 10-year-old girl, who was almost 11 and made sure that everybody knew it. And something her 7-year-old brother was jealous of, even if it was just a gumball. But what really got him was the way she smiled, a new way, an almost kind look, held out the huge purple sphere of gum between her middle finger and thumb and said, "I can't have all the luck. You can have this." Somehow, even though he didn't want to, he held out his hand so that she could drop it into his open palm like he was some kind of sucker, like some stupid kid taking charity from a girl. Still, he slipped the gumball into his front pocket and smiled. A new smile for him, one that said, "I'm going to get you back, and good." It was not a kind smile. Their parents didn't see his look. They were busy talking to the guy at the counter near the register. They did see Sarah hand him the gumball, though. "That's really nice of you," their mother said, patting Sarah on the head in a very ridiculous gesture before turning back to the counter. To Jimmy, it looked like the kind of thing that was only for pets, like dogs and cats. "Thank you," he said, but he didn't mean it one bit. The half-moon cookies were as good as they always were, and both children ate them with a greedy desire. They left a little while later, and on the walk home, Jimmy kept thinking about how his sister had taken his lucky penny, and that he was going to get her back for it. But her luck didn't seem to be working after that. Nothing special was happening to her after they left the bakery. Jimmy began to think that things were going to be okay again, and that all his worries about the penny that Sarah had picked up weren't actually true. After all, he had the gumball. It was worth 25 cents, more than a stupid penny. It was harder to chew a penny than gum anyway, and the gum was better than any balloon, especially a pink one. These things led him to think that he was going to be okay, and that he had actually won out on the deal. But at 4:37 p.m. that afternoon, the phone rang, and Jimmy knew that the penny was one of the special ones. It was their Grandma Hazel, on their dad's side, the one with all the cool stuff to do. The grandma who had divorced their grandfather before the grandkids had been born, but not before taking a lot of their grandfather's money and stuff first. That's how their father had put it. He refused to take sides, but Jimmy knew that his father felt a little sorry for what his mother had done to his father. Since Jimmy was on good terms with both grandparents, he didn't really care. Well, it turned out that Grandma wanted to take Sarah shopping, and only Sarah this time. It was the first time that Grandma hadn't asked to take out both kids. It was explained to him that Grandma and Sarah were going to go shopping for clothes mostly, so little Jimmy would probably just be bored. But it wasn't just the shopping that upset Jimmy. Grandma Hazel was taking Sarah to one of those big malls with all the cool stuff. The mall with a gigantic arcade, a mini golf course, a movie theater, and a huge toy store. Even the comic book and collectible card store. After Sarah had gone and his parents went off to do yard work, Jimmy started to feed that thing in his heart again, a thing called jealousy. It feasted on his hate and greed. For the 5 hours that his sister and grandmother were gone, he allowed the thing inside him to grow. It got bigger. He was angry because he'd stopped to pick up the penny first. But she'd taken it right in front of him, and his parents hadn't even tried to make her give it back. It became harder for him to smile or be kind. When the dog came to him with the toy he liked to play fetch with, Jimmy roughly shoved the animal away and glared at it like some kind of disgusting skin disease. "Go away, you stupid dog," he shouted meanly. When the dog came back a short while later, he kicked the dog at the side without a word. He stomped off in a rage and went up to his room. Jimmy sat there on his bed and brooded. He was trying to think of a way to get back at his sister for taking the penny. He could clearly envision her coming home from shopping with tons of new stuff, Her arms would be full of expensive shirts and pants. She would gloat and tell him about the sale at the toy store. She would have the best day ever, all because he hadn't picked up the penny when he had the chance. He paced his room. In his anger, he tripped on one of his big plastic airplanes he hadn't put away and hit his shoulder on the wood frame of the bed. He punched the mattress violently. When he looked down at the airplane, he realized it was broken. It was his favorite one, too. When Sarah came through the front door that evening, her unbridled smile was all that he needed to see. Jamie could tell that she'd had the time of her life while he sat around the house and had done nothing. She was holding bags full of stuff, and so did their grandma, who was standing behind Sarah with a pleased look on her face. His anger and jealousy turned into rage like nothing he had ever experienced before. It was my penny, he thought angrily. I saw it first. It was mine and you took it away from me. His cheeks grew red and his hands balled into shaking fists. Watching his parents smile and join in the good feeling only made it worse. Sarah was talking excitedly and pulling things out of the bags to show them what had gotten her so excited. New sweaters, fancy shoes, a new set of headphones for her CD player. Jimmy replayed the scene that had taken place earlier that day, when he had spotted the penny glinting in the morning sun. He saw Sarah reach down and pick it up as pretty as you please. Her smile had been so unpleasant, so cruel. He could not stand it any more. "That was my penny, Sarah," he shouted, and rushed at her with all the fury his 7-year-old body could contain. He plowed into his unsuspecting sister, knocking her down on the hardwood floor in the entryway. The headphones flew out of her hands and cracked as they hit the bookshelf. He could hear her head hit the wood with a solid thunk. In that brief instant he grinned. It was an ugly grin, one that some might have called a smile of evil delight. He felt his father grab his arms. Like two steel cables, they encircled his upper arms and he was hauled up off of Sarah. His limbs flailed wildly as he was a cornered rabid animal fighting for his life. "Stop it, damn it!" his father was yelling in a very commanding and furious voice. Jimmy felt himself thrown onto the couch with more force than he was expecting. He hit it hard and all of a sudden he couldn't breathe. He tried to suck in air, but all that did was make his pain even worse. His mouth opened in a wide O, like a fish struggling to breathe out of water. "What do you think you're doing?" his mother was shouting hysterically. She was aiming her words at both her son and her husband. Through the pain, he thought that perhaps this just might be the end of Jimmy Sean Newman's life. He could see the look on his father's face as his father looked from his daughter to his son. It was an agonized look, apologetic and furious. All because of that penny that Sarah had taken from him. Sarah was getting up with the help of her shocked grandmother, who had dropped her bags as soon as Jimmy had violently tackled his sister. She was looking at him with concern and confusion as he lay gasping for breath on the couch. Sarah was telling her grandmother that she was okay, but their grandma wasn't having any of it. There was a little blood trickling from Sarah's head where it struck the floor, and she was trying hard not to cry. Jimmy lay there, arms outstretched and clutching the cushions on the couch as though they were life preservers and he was drowning. He still couldn't breathe. His chest was a mass of pain. His muscles screamed inside of him. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" his mother was still shouting hysterically at his father. And then, like a small ray of sunshine through a stormy sky, the first intake of air hit Jimmy's lungs. It was hard to breathe in, painful, but his body demanded air. It needed air to survive, and it wanted more. Each breath began to become less painful, and his mother finally stopped shouting. His father knelt down beside him on the floor and was saying how sorry he was and that he had lost his head and how it would never happen again. Jimmy just nodded. A few moments later he could breathe easily again, though his chest still hurt a little and his back muscles too. "Just had the wind knocked out of you," his father said in a very relieved voice. "You'll be fine. And I'm so sorry, he said, tenderly running a hand through his son's hair. His mother wasn't so satisfied. "What got into you, Jimmy?" she demanded. There were drying tears in her eyes. "Dunno," he answered truthfully. "I just wanted to hurt her for taking what was mine." Is this what had driven him to tackle his sister so hard? Sarah stepped up beside him. "I know what this is about," she said sheepishly. "It's that stupid penny I picked up today." She bent down a little so that their faces were only a foot apart. When she reached forward, Jimmy flinched a little. "Don't worry," she said kindly. "I only did it as a joke," she finished, her words soft. Something in the tone of her voice made him believe her. She sounded sincere, and there was an unmistakable tone of regret mixed with an unspoken apology. He sat still and silent as she reached down and put her hand on the top of his right hand front pocket. He pulled away then, but only slightly. He doubted that she was going to do anything crazy in front of their parents and grandmother. Giving his sister a questioning look, he leaned back a little. In a very uncomfortable silence, Sarah slipped her hand into his right front pocket and took hold of an object inside of it. She pulled it out and held the small object out for him to see. A penny, new and shiny. "I slipped it in there before we went to the bakery. You were so absorbed in watching those birds that you didn't even notice," Sarah said slowly. She turned away from him to look at her father. "He was so upset about me taking the penny that I slipped it into his pocket while we were watching that flock of birds flying south. I didn't think that it was really lucky or unlucky. I thought that it was just for fun. But now I know that Uncle Kurt was right. There are such things as unlucky pennies." Jimmy sat there looking up at her in stunned silence. He was trying to figure out how he hadn't known it was there the whole time. He was confused at first, but after thinking about it for a few seconds, it all made sense. His head felt clearer now, and he began to relive the day's events in his head. It wasn't that she was lucky, but that he had been unlucky. He remembered how angry he had been when Sarah had given him the gumball, when he should have been grateful, and how angry he had been since then, until he actually attacked his sister, something he had never done before. He could forgive his father for picking him up roughly and throwing him on the couch. Jimmy had not been himself. The penny was doing what Uncle Kurt had said, giving him bad luck. "When I first touched the penny, I could feel myself, well, I don't know," Sarah said, shaking her head as she struggled to find the right words. "I felt mean, like I wanted Jimmy to have a bad day, so I gave it to him, and it worked." She shook her head in disbelief. "It actually worked. As soon as I dropped it into his pocket, I felt better," she said. "It was like Uncle Kurt said. Whoever gets that thing will have bad luck while it's in their possession, and a penny like that will always be unlucky. There's no changing it." She looked at her brother. "I'm sorry." He looked back at her. He was a little upset with her, but also dumbfounded. He had wanted the penny so bad, and she'd given it to him. "That's okay," Jimmy said softly. "I wanted it anyway." Now the question was what to do with it. Uncle Kurt had said that a lucky or unlucky penny would always be what it was. You couldn't change the luck. He no longer doubted the fact that there were unlucky pennies. Then he knew what to do. "Can I have it back for a minute?" he asked his sister, holding out his hand. She shrugged. "I guess so," she said, looking curious, and dropped it into his waiting hand. She looked relieved. When the coin hit his hand, he could feel a twinge of the anger that had caused him to attack his sister. Jimmy got up, went to the front door with the penny still lying in his open palm. He opened the door, walked down to the street, and dropped the penny through the slits of the water drainage gate and went back into the living room. "There," he said, looking satisfied with himself. "That should take care of it." But there was one thing about an unlucky penny that his uncle had never warned him about, though his grandmother knew. She looked at Jimmy with a sad smile. "You forgot one thing," she said. "A bad penny always turns back up."